Hello everyone, welcome to The Green Man. Hope you're all good and well. So it's now time to continue with my top 20 albums and countdown lists. And following on from my last one for 2019, I am now going to do my top 20 albums from 2018, a year which I thought was a really fantastic year for metal, perhaps for music in general as well. But I thought there were particularly some really good progressive metal releases in 2018, so a few of those will be appearing on this list. I also like to stress that this is obviously a personal list, so you may very well have a list which looks very different to mine. I mean, the beauty of doing these lists is that we can share and discover new music. I mean, I never tire of discovering new music and probably never will tire of discovering new music. And just to mention as well that there are, as ever, some non-metal choices, although, again, as with the last list I did, there aren't so many non-metal picks. I do sometimes like to dabble outside of metal, take a break from it, and, discover whether it's sort of indie rock or shoegaze bands occasionally. So you may find some non-metal choices on here as well. So let's start now with my honourable mentions. The first of my honourable mentions I have here on CD, which is Skeleton Witch's Devouring Radiant Light. I mean, I think given that this was a bit of a comeback album for them, I mean, their frontman departed the band, and so this album had a new frontman. But it's a pretty, pretty impressive and consistent release, I think, with a lot of good songs on here, like Fen of Shadows, Devouring Radiant Light as well is a really good one. So yeah, good release from Skeleton Witch in 2018. Next I will mention is Augury's Illusive Golden Age. I really liked this album. I liked its kind of approach and the structure to the different songs, and it had some eerie sounding moments within some of the tracks as well, which I thought gave it a great atmosphere. I really liked Maritime on this album, a really kind of memorable riff on that track with a great introduction. So that's Augury's Illusive Golden Age coming in. It's my second honourable mention. So next honourable mention is Alice in Chains with Rainier Fog. I suppose if you've been following my channel for quite a while, you might realise I am, a pretty big Alice in Chains fan. I like probably all of their albums. I can't think of any I don't like. And this album's no exception. I do like this one. It's probably not my favourite even from their recent albums. I think personally Black is Way to Blue and The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here are fabulous albums. But this is also very good. I particularly enjoy So Far Under, Never Fade and All I Am, which come right, the last three tracks on this one. It's, another solid release. Alice in Chains, even post Lane Staley. Some people can't get past Lane no longer being in the band, but I still really like their stuff that they're putting out. Next up we have Riverside with Wasteland, a band beset by really tragic circumstances. I mean, I have to say, I think the loss of their guitarist, I could pronounce his name right here, Piotr Grudzinski, I think. Really apologise if I got that wrong. But yeah, this Polish prog rock band, they really deliver another pretty captivating album. It's obviously a bit more emotional with the circumstances leading into this album, but still very, very good. I really like Veil of Tears, Guardian Angel and River Down Below on this. But if you don't know Riverside, check out the rest of their catalogue. They've got some incredible albums. I mean, I'm thinking of Second Life Syndrome, I think it is personally, that I think is just phenomenal. So get to Riverside if you don't know them and you like your prog. Next up we have Circles with The Last One. This is a gent band, I would say a gent band with clean singing. And this is another album where I think the second half is really, really strong and kind of outperforms the first half a bit for me, as I remember. I really like Resolution, Dream Sequence, Renegade, Blueprints for a Great Escape. One for any fans of gens out there and that kind of a sound. I actually think this was a really good release that probably went under the radar a bit in 2018. Next up at number 20, A Familiar Name, because I reviewed one of their albums, reviewed their recent album, Voivod with The Wake, and here they deliver more obscure delights to us with tracks like Obsolete Beings and Always Moving. Really like them and their ability just to continue to be inventive and creative with pretty much all the things they put out. So Voivod's The Wake here comes in at number 20. Next up, At number 19, we have Between the Buried and Me with Automata 1. I liked Automata 2 as well, but Automata 1 for me is where it's at. I really liked Condemned to the Gallows, Millions, Blocked. Bit more accessible than some of BT Bam's other albums as well. I think it's perhaps a bit less insane technically, this album, and just has that bit more accessibility to it. So perhaps as an entry point to Between the Buried and Me, I recommend Automata 1. It's still a good album and a good way to start to get into the madness that is the musicianship of Between the Buried and Me. Next up at 18, we have Revocation's The Outer Ones. A bit more of a visceral and groovy Revocation album. I think this ranked about halfway up in my ranking of their discography not so long ago. And I love the title track in particular on this album, which has Meshuggah tendencies towards the end of it. So that's The Outer Ones by Revocation at number 18. Number 17 now we have Omnium Gatherum with The Burning Cold. I love that album cover as well. It's kind of colourful and it's a pile of skulls, very metal. But yeah, great release. Wasn't so keen on their most recent release, was a little bit lukewarm towards Origin, but The Burning Cold for me is them in form, and this is an excellent release with lots of really good melodic death on here if you like your melodeath. So who am I up to next? At number 16 we have Psychonaut with Unfold the Godman. This was a bit of a surprise to me in the sense that I think it was one of these YouTube recommendations. I wasn't expecting, necessarily anything nearly as good as what I got, because it was just the first time I'd listened to this band, and I was just blown away by the ambitiousness of this album. If anything else, I think if you like your prog, if you like Pink Floyd, but you can withstand a bit of sludgy heaviness as well, you got to check out Psychonaut. This album was a great one and an underrated one from 2018. Sananda, The Fall of Consciousness, really good songs from that album. Now, time for a non-metal pick with the absolutely kind of beautiful vocal harmonies of First Aid Kit and their album Ruins here. This is a Swedish folk duo, but they tend to lean a bit towards country and Americana stuff as well, and yeah, great songwriting, great performances, and some highlights on here for me would be Fireworks, To Live a Life, My Wild Sweet Love, Don't Mind Me, a bit of First Aid Kit for sure. Up next at number 14 we have Ghost with Prequelle, an album which really divided possibly their fan base, those that really prefer the old school, heavier, slightly more metal Ghost, than maybe this version, which is a bit more upbeat, much more anthemic in a sense. I guess Dance Macabre gets a lot of attention on this album, but there's a lot of really good and melodic songs on here as well, with beautifully done guitar solos. I always think the guitar solos in Ghost are just absolutely brilliant. So that's Prequelle coming in here at number 14. At number 13 we have a big release from 2018 with Judas Priest's Firepower, the British heavy metal legends here. I thought delivered one of the best albums I'd heard from them in maybe a little while. I just think this was a great album, full of catchy stuff, and them doing what they do best, but doing it really, really well. And I thoroughly enjoyed No Surrender and Flamethrower on this one, amongst others. But yeah, I was kind of a little bit, just impressed at just how good this one was from Judas Priest, and it's a very well produced album as well. Next up, at number 12, we have Kontinuum's No Need to Reason. This came out on Season of Mist in 2018. It's kind of gothic rock that sounds, not so far maybe from Typo Negative or even Unto Others a bit, if you want to think of a more recent band that sort of have I'd say a similar style, but this is very mellow. This is really mellow stuff on a lot of this, but it's gorgeous. I think it's a really, just a great little album that probably may have slipped under a lot of radars in this year. I certainly don't remember seeing this on any lists of YouTubers or any channels or websites that I follow. I could not see this on any of those when this came out in 2018, and yet it is a really good one. I think a very underrated choice, and one that I thought, yep, I'm going to definitely have this one in my top 20 albums, back both in 2018 and still now as well. Check out Kontinuum, No Need to Reason. Again, another album with a really strong second half, I think. Coming up next at number 11 is a prog choice. Surprise, surprise, here we go again with Vola, Applause of a Distant Crowd. If you like Absentia by Porcupine Tree, you probably like this, I think. Really kind of sensitive, well-written songs on here with quite sort of, they're djenty, so they've got that djent sound, but they're also combine well with the Cynthia sounds on here too. Really well balanced, well produced album. Perhaps I like this even more than Witness, which was of course in my top 20 albums of 2021. Where does that lead me next? To number 10. So we now into the top 10 with Hooded Menace and Ossuarium Silhouettes Unhallowed. Hooded Menace, you know, on one of these bands, they just keep delivering really good albums. Ossuarium Silhouettes Unhallowed was terrific, I thought. It had a bit more of a sort of, there were a couple of tracks on here which were a little bit Catatonia-like as well. They were really beautiful sounding, so it wasn't all just the grimy kind of dirty death doom that you might be used to with Hooded Menace. This was a bit of a slightly cleaner album, and certainly very well produced, and a great album from 2018. Next up at number 9, a band I've been talking about a fair bit lately, Amorphis and Queen of Time. It was my number 4 choice in there, in the ranking I did for them, so no surprise to see this one pretty high up again at number 9 here. You know, really big production value, just really big sounding songs, and almost every track on here, you know, a lot of the tracks on here actually gave me goosebumps and still do when I listen to them, particularly, you know, tracks like The Bee and Daughter of Hate, Amongst Stars. There's just so many good tracks on this album. It's a great one from Amorphis, and it comes in here at number 9. At number 8 we have Wolfheart with Constellation of the Black Light, which is another one I've got here on CD. Actually, of Wolfheart's albums, this might just be one I think I like this perhaps the most. And you know, Thomas Salkonen's side project Wolfheart, I really like this one. I mean, it's kind of got a lot of fist pumping songs on here, but they're all just, you know, all the moments, the big moments are really good, and the choruses. So yeah, I really like this release from Wolfheart in 2018. It comes in high up at number 8. At number 7 we have another album. I think I've mentioned this, another album that bands that I've mentioned before on the channel, with Immortal and Northern Chaos Gods. You know, Demonaz, I really like his work here, and you know, even without Abath in the mix, this is still really good album from Immortal, with the likes of Grim and Dark, Mighty Raven Dark, awesome black metal release from the legendary Immortal. Up next at number 6, an album written in really difficult circumstances, or at least as I understand it. Mike Scheitz wrote a lot of this album in his hospital bed, and so, you know, the circumstances kind of fit a lot of the emotional kind of weight behind this album. It's quite a long album, but at the same time it's kind of hypnotic, so even though it's quite a long album, I think a lot of the time I kind of just drift away with it and really enjoy the you know, some of this album's beauty, and it's very raw. It is, like the title are, Raw Heart. It's a very raw album, but as I say, it's kind of hypnotic, but hypnotic in a strong way. Up next at number 5, an artist who I think doesn't nearly get enough attention, Emma Ruth Rundle, with her release on Dark Horses, and of her solo albums, this is possibly my favourite. You know, she's done a collaboration with Thou, which was of course my number 1 of 2020, so obviously I am a fan of Emma Ruth Rundle's, and On Dark Horses for me was an absolutely brilliant album from 2018. Another album that you just didn't get the attention I think it really deserved from that year. and it's got really good songs on here. She writes great songs, I think, and they have this kind of really lush sounding post-rock atmosphere with lots of them. You know, Light Song, You Don't Have to Cry. I liked On Dark Horses. The title track on this one was excellent too. That's Emma Ruth Rundle, On Dark Horses, coming in at number 5. At number 4, it's, you know, it's hard not to think of this. It's one of the first albums I think of when someone says to me, what are your favourite albums from 2018? And naturally, that's why it's at number 4. I think this was a really memorable album from them. Sluggish, with esoteric melancholy. And, you know, I like the playful takes on other metal song titles with the song names on this album. But it's got loads and loads of great moments packed into this album. I mean, I love the transition between Crop Killer and the Spectral Burrows. I really like the kind of groove on Slave Goo World. The slightly more ominous, maybe Sulphur. This is just brilliant. What a release from 2018. And if you like Mastodon, early Mastodon particularly, don't miss out on Sluggish. Next up, sorry, I'm just getting a bit tired. It's just been a long day, and I am just, you know, still a tiny bit post-COVID, sort of, just a little bit of that perhaps as well at play. Let's go on to number 3 now with Rivers of Nihil, Where Owls Know My Name. This album to me has kind of become almost iconic already. Just from recent years, it's sort of the prog metal release that everyone thinks of perhaps from this year. Launched them, for me it launched Rivers of Niles into a lot of people in the metal community talking about this album, and it deserved every mention I think that it had. It's a great album, beautiful flow to it, and just some of the best use of the saxophone in an album as heavy as this that I've ever heard. And, you know, combines mood with the more sort of, you know, pummeling death metal passages in the best way. So that's Where Owls Know My Name, Rivers of Nihil, number 3. Doesn't get much better than this for me. At number 2, well, 2 more albums that I have put higher up than Rivers of Nihil, believe it or not, that I thought were also just brilliant, and also albums I loved. You know, these top 3 probably, or top 4, even top 5, I've loved almost equally. But this is Horrendous's Idol, progressive metal, progressive death metal even. If you like Death's individual thought patterns, you know, that sort of era, I think you'll love this album. It's a little bit technical, but it's also affords time for the slightly kind of more melodic breaks that you get in this as well, and just really, I love the vocals, the harsh vocals in this album. They're really kind of gnarly, really good. The Idolator, absolutely killer, just killer. Next up, we have my number 1 pick, and, you know, there have been a few albums on this list where I've said these albums deserve more attention. You know, they're really underrated, and this album in particular, I did not see, I don't think, on anybody's lists or any lists anywhere online, and I was just mortified. And I'm like, well, because I love this album so much, this is going to be my number 1 from 2018 when I got to the end of 2018. This is Inferi with Revenant. Inferi, I think, are relatively well known, perhaps if you're tech death fans, but outside of that, I still don't think they get the attention they quite deserve. And this album seemed to just pass a lot of people by. And yet, how good is it? You know, it's kind of melodic. You know, you've got these really great melodic guitar solos. You know, I think there's 2 guitarists at play that are doing these solos together, and they just play off one another superbly well. So that's my number 1 pick. Condemned Assailant on here, one of the best metal songs I've ever heard. Like, just outstanding. Condemned Assailant. Don't miss that track if you're inclined towards heavier, more technical metal. It's just incredible. Right, and that's it from me for my latest list from 2018. If you enjoy these lists, then of course, do drop a like and subscribe if you want to see more of these kind of lists on the channel, or more recommendations from me, or album reviews, or sci-fi, fantasy, and horror on the side as well. Otherwise, for me, that's the end of another end of year list. Take care, everybody. See you next time, and for me, it's bye for now.